Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be reacting to I Got Stuck with 500 Girls After My Dad Disappeared by ETU Animations. I will be leaving the link to the channel in the chat description. And don't forget to go sub to them and subscribe. Let's try to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month. And after that, the year. Anyways, I hope you enjoy.
Right? But before you say, hang on, that's just impossible. Consider this. Genghis Khan has over 16 million descendants that scientists can identify. Historians estimate he must have fathered hundreds of children. A man in Ghana has over 100 kids. A former senator in the Philippines had over 80. And that's not counting the ones their family don't know about. Crazy, right? My dad was a Genghis Khan. In his own right, conquering the world during his travels, but in the sperm donor kind of way. Hi, I'm Devin, and I'm going to tell you about the time I found out that I have 500 sisters.
What?
Before anything else, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell icon to show your support
500
for
sisters.
Dad loved to travel, but the problem was he didn't really have any money. He grew up
Quick! The quicker picker-upper. Bounty.
Let me skip them.
Alexa, what year was
Oh, stay it. There we go.
And his parents didn't really see the value in traipsing around the world. They were humble, traditional folk, and all they ever wanted was for their son to get a job at the neighbor's farm, get married, settle down, and have kids. But my dad had other ideas. He got his first taste of travel when he won a ticket to Hawaii playing cards with some stranger at a local bar. And when he got home, as my grandparents would tell it, all he could talk about was how the experience had changed him. He met so many different people, all of color, from all different walks of life, far from what he's grown up with in our little village of 1,200 people. From then on, my dad was determined he wanted to see more of the world. He worked any job he could find.
Press the like button on this video.
Pumping gas, waiting tables,
pretty good so far,
mowing people's lawns, and fixing their roofs. Eventually, he'd saved up enough for a ticket, and the first destination he chose was Italy. He hitchhiked and cycled through most of the places he went, staying only in hostels and sometimes even sleeping in public parks when he was low on funds. He had his guitar with him, so he'd busk around town and use what change he earned to get to his next port of call. It was when he was having lunch in a taverna in Milan that he met the guy who would spark his interest in becoming a sperm donor. He'd overheard the man's phone conversations, and as soon as he found out how much it paid, he had no doubt in his mind that he wanted to do it. Now, the whole thing wasn't really on the up and up, so not only did they not require so much paperwork and background checks,
this guy found out he has 500 sisters by his dad making a bunch of money for being a sperm donor. What? Is that even a thing? Like, you getting money for being a sperm donor?
And my dad was tall, charming, and handsome, so as soon as they saw him, he was immediately selected. The guy who referred him became quick friends with my dad. He told him about the clinics in Switzerland that pay an even handsomer sum for donors who qualified. And so, being that they were only a few hours' drive away, they drove.
Fairlife is ultra-filtered milk with a capital.
Ads, stop.
Switzerland.
I don't want to get
about a month and a half
claimed.
there, just making the rounds in the various clinics and making a
really
bit of money for
don't
himself.
feel like getting copyright
When his holiday was
claimed.
done, he came home. But as soon as he set foot in our small village, he was itching to go again. He went back to Europe, visiting its countries one by one, train hopping from Portugal to Romania on a railway pass. And then he went to Asia, all the while paying for his travels by being a donor and busking wherever he could. He would eat only at the places that were local to save money. He'd rely on people's kindness when he couldn't afford a room. He would even sometimes sleep in a tent by the beach or in his trusty hammock. And when he'd had his fill of being a citizen of the world, he went back to our little town. Soon after, he met my mom. It was a whirlwind romance. They got married in less than 2 months of meeting each other. And in the following weeks, Mom was already pregnant with me. Now, having spent most of the money here...
within 2 months and 2 weeks, she was already pregnant?
...earned on the wedding and with a baby on the way,
married.
My dad took my mom to my grandparents' home, and they lived there for a while. My dad then decided that since his career in music did not look like it was ever going to take off, that he'd instead turn to the one thing he knew would pay him enough to feed his new family. He drove miles and miles to whatever city had a clinic, and he would donate there as many times as they allowed. And then he would move on to the next. He did this until just about the time of my birth. When my mother was due to give birth to me, he came home and stayed home. He took a bartending job at the only pub in town, and as soon as I was born, he put down a down payment for a house. Dad eventually saved up enough to buy the bar that he worked in, and it was at the right time, too, because in the following months, our town boomed.
Who's your favorite girlfriend? Okay, hold on. Okay, so...
of people poured in, and they all went to our pub to eat and drink. He was able to retire before he was diagnosed with cancer. I grew up in that small town, in that same house that my dad bought on the day I was born. I was their only child, as far as I knew. So I didn't really expect that one day I'd meet 500 girls from all over the world who turned out to be my half-sisters. It was on Dad's funeral that I met them. I was wondering why there were a bunch of girls we didn't know who turned up at the service. At first, I thought the worst. Being that Dad was such a charismatic man who knew his way around women, I thought he had been cheating on Mom. But when I asked her about it as we walked up the hill to the cemetery, my grandpa leaned in and said, "Those aren't your dad's mistresses, Dev. They're your sisters." I would have chuckled if they weren't about to lower my dad to his grave. The sheer impossibility of it all made me think that Grandpa chose that time to make an ill-timed joke. But as soon as we all got home and found that the 500 girls had turned up at our house, Grandpa's little joke was confirmed as fact. It turned out my dad had kept in contact with the girls and their families, despite there being a rule that he shouldn't. My mom said he just wanted to know how they were growing up, because he still considered them his children. That was when Grandpa sat me down and told me the stories of Dad's life before he had me.
There's children, so...
What? Why didn't you tell me any of this? I asked my mom.
Imagine being
down as
family
tears
and
slowly
not
ran
telling
down her
your
cheek.
child about something
Sorry,
that
son.
doesn't exactly really matter.
She said.
Like,
He just
like
wanted to think that you
it doesn't
were
matter.
pride
You
and
can just
joy.
tell your children. It's not like,
He wasn't too
oh,
proud
your
about
only
how he made his
child.
living before you came. I didn't want you to think he was some loser who traveled around the world without a job or any money.
Oh,
What? Why would I care about that? Why would I get jealous knowing that I have sisters? And I actually think it's pretty cool that he got to travel to so many places. Are you kidding me? He went and did what he wanted to do on no money and just his willingness to do whatever it took. I'm proud of him, Mom. My mom hugged me. I'm so glad to hear that, Deb. She sniffed. And as if that was his cue, my grandpa introduced me to one of my sisters. Her name was Lena, and she was from Switzerland. Then there was Audrey, Camilla, Sayuri, Elena, Lee May, Maria Teresa, Maria Lenora, Maria Josepha. On and on, the list of names I needed to
At Charmin, we make paper, but we love trees.
remember went. By the end of it all,
Why is there so
I was
much
sure my
ads?
brain was
Holy
about
crap.
to explode. That day was like reading a book that was a huge exposition dump. There was one thing I noticed about them, though. They were all stunningly beautiful. Mom told me the girls all wanted to stay for a while, get to know our family and the town we lived in. And when she did, the one question I had in mind was, But where are they gonna stay? It wasn't as if there was just an endless number of accommodation in town. Sure, the place had boomed and the population had grown from a measly 1,000 to 20, but I struggled to imagine that the town's one hotel and 3 motels could even have 100 rooms between them. At that, my mom replied, "At our house, of course." Here? In this 3-bedroom? I asked incredulously. That was when I saw my mom smile for the first time that day. I knew that face she had. It was the face she'd get whenever she was hiding a surprise for me. And she was. Grandpa drove us down the road. We lived at the edge of town and the properties were quite a distance apart. And when I saw the for sale sign on the Joneses' farm that had red letters on top of it saying, "Sold?" I asked where our neighbors had gone. "I didn't know the Joneses were moving," I said. And as soon as I did, I pieced it all together. "Your dad wanted this to be a surprise for your birthday. He was always saying how much he wanted to leave you a better life. He saved and saved all those years, Deb." Whatever my mom wanted to say next was muffled by her sobs. I hugged her and I cried into her shoulder. I didn't know what else to say. My sisters all went in for a hug too. That was how I ended up living with all 500 of my sisters. My dad not only bought the neighbor's farm with his
That's
savings,
actually insane.
he also built a massive house to add to the existing one. In a letter that he wrote before he passed, he told us that he always wondered if any of my sisters would come to visit. He also said that if they did one day, he wanted me to have enough room for all of them. My dad always had a plan, even for the most impossible things. I
Look, Mom! No cavities!
Oh, Debbie, that's great. You'll always need a healthy smile.
really admired him for that. Over the next month, I got to know my sisters, and they got to know me. We'd play games together, visit Dad's old pub, and tend to the farm. At night, we'd all cook together and have dinner with my mom and my grandparents. Sometimes we'd cap the night off by watching a movie on a projector that we'd set up in the vast garden. On days when there's nothing else to do, we'd lounge around the pool, or I'd take them to the nearby river. I have to admit, it was very confusing seeing my half-sisters in their swimwear. And the way they took care of me and how they were always so touchy-feely made my brain hurt even more. Was I supposed to?
If you guys enjoyed, please make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video. Let's try to hit 20 subscribers by tomorrow, so that I can post videos for 3 days in a row. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed.